Hi, my name's James Cook. I'm with the University of Maine at Augusta, and today we're going to consider the question, what is social science research? It may seem like the answer is obvious, but really it's not. There are a lot of ways to think about research, and a lot of ways to think about what research is trying to get at, which is knowledge. Outside of the university system in our daily lives, we try to get knowledge in a lot of ways. One way is to ask friends what they think. That's conformity. Another way is to ask people in charge what they think, whether that's someone in charge of a religion, or someone in charge of a family, or someone in charge of a government. That's a reference to authority and believing what authority has to tell you. You could think about your own past experience, engage in some introspection, and that might be valuable for figuring out where you particularly have been, although psychologists have found out that our memories of our lives are actually not always reliable, first of all. And second, your story is not the same as everyone else's. There are billions of people on the planet, and the vast majority of them you'll never meet. So your own experience is not necessarily reflecting the experience of other people. We could just go online and read something, or we could pick up a newspaper and read something, but does that make it true? Don't always believe what you've been told. Don't always believe what you read in a book or what you read online. We could make references to common sense or what everyone knows, but the problem with that is that our notion of everyone is limited to our social circle, which is not the same as the world. And common sense is really a set of stories that are present inside a culture. And that culture that we're steeped in is one aspect of social reality, but it's not the same thing as how things actually work. We could just make something up. We could just proclaim something to be true, and that's creative, but it's not necessarily an accurate reflection of what's really going on. So the University of Maine at Augusta, as an academic institution, tries to define research in a more limited way, but even that more limited definition is pretty expansive. Conducting a search of and reporting the current literature pertaining to a subject of interest, that's kind of like just reading online, but within a more limited academic scope. The production of scholarly or creative work for publication, performance, or exhibition. So dance might be thought of as research, or pottery might be thought of as research, or photography might be research, or publishing a poem. The development of critique or interpretations, discussion. Is that research? Certainly in a broad academic sense, in some disciplines it is. The exploration of alternative perspectives. New ways of thinking. Is that research? According to the University of Maine at Augusta, it is. However, these kinds of definitions of research are not what social scientists in particular mean when they refer to research. Social science research at the University of Maine at Augusta and at other universities would probably draw a line through most of these depictions of what research is. And we would say, of course, for other disciplines, there may be other definitions, but for our discipline, the definition is designing, conducting, analyzing, and reporting results of inquiry into some subject of interest using either quantitative or qualitative methods, and assessing something about it. I would say, adding to that, that we do that by measuring something empirical, making an observation of a measurable world, the world that is accessible to our senses. To do this means that we are engaging in a process, not just a one-step activity. The words that were used in that definition after we sliced through so many possibilities include verbs like designing, research method. How are you going to do it? Conducting, engaging in the actual practice of doing it, not just talking about doing it. doing it. Analyzing the data, the information that you get from that research. Quantitative observation, that's numerical. Qualitative observation, putting things in categories that perhaps don't have numbers associated with them. And finally, not just engaging in the process for our own benefit, but sharing what we have learned with others through presentation, typically at a conference, or publication, typically in a book or a journal. This is what social science researchers do. Now, you'll notice if we go back a little bit earlier in the video that I drew a line through the phrase conducting a search of and reporting the current literature pertaining to a subject of interest. I want to bring it back a little bit because it has to do with a literature review of others' ideas, and it has to do with a place where creativity can fit in research. That is bringing your own new ideas in, and that has to do with theory. Now, theory is not research, but it enables research. It structures and organizes our research activity. Theory in social science does not mean what it typically means in casual English. Theory is not a guess. So when we say, oh, that's just a theory, it doesn't mean it's just a guess. It's not just a belief, something that we think is true for no reason other than a hunch. It is not a reference to philosophy having to do with values, about what should be the case, what we would like the world to be like. Instead, theory is a logical account that tells a story, but it's a systematic story, and explains somehow how a phenomenon comes to be, how a phenomenon changes over time, over space, or in some other way of varying. That's what a theory does. That's where a literature review can be very valuable. We can find out what other theories other researchers have developed, and then we can figure out how to make observations to test that theory. So the relationship of research to theory, it can take one of three forms. First, we could make observations without theory, and that is mere description, simply documenting what actually happened. And that can be valuable if what actually happened is really important, or a subject of question. On the other hand, what do we do if we don't have a theory? Well, we can try to build theory. We can take that description and we can look for patterns, and we can use that to try to build a systematic, logical story. And that is the process called induction. Or we could take a theory that already exists and make some new observations to test that theory. Does observable reality match what the theory says? That's deduction. To do that kind of measurement and observation, we're going to rely on a basic unit, and that is the variable. The variable is the basic unit of research. It's a characteristic that can be observed and that can take on multiple different values. These are also called attributes. So now there are some things in the world that are constant. Where are you today? What planet are you on? Earth. What planet are you on tomorrow? Earth. What planet will you be on Thursday? Earth. But there are some characteristics that change, and those are called variables. We think about the world in terms of really two kinds of variables, a dependent variable and an independent variable. Now, a dependent variable is a characteristic whose value can vary. That's what makes it a variable. But what makes it dependent? Well, its value is thought to be affected by the value of something else. That something else is an independent variable. Now, an independent variable is also a variable. It's a characteristic, but it's not dependent, right? That's what the in means. In means not. It's the variable whose value is thought to affect the dependent variable, but not necessarily vice versa. If we get really advanced in social science research, we can think about mutual relationships, but Most relationships in social science have to do with dependent variables, things that are affected by independent variables. And what's the way in which they affect one another? Well, our predictions based on theories, our general stories, are called hypotheses. And what we do is we make predictions about how variables will relate to one another. And in deduction, we test them. In induction, we develop hypotheses for further research just by looking and seeing what patterns emerge. This is the basis of social science research in just a few minutes. If you can work this basic definition of research into your long-term memory for the rest of the semester in a research methods course, you'll do quite well. Almost everything that we will be discussing from this point forward has to do with the subjects that we've considered in this very brief video.